Picture a golden field of wheat, humble yet the backbone of global food security. For thousands of years, wheat has been a symbol of sustenance, civilization, and connection. From ancient times to the present day, this simple grain has shaped economies, cultures, and even the fate of nations. Every day, ships carry millions of tons of grain from surplus nations to those in need, quietly feeding the world. These vessels form invisible lifelines, linking continents and ensuring that bread reaches tables from Cairo to Calcutta, from Lagos to London. The global grain trade is a silent force, working behind the scenes to keep hunger at bay. But this system is fragile, easily disrupted by war or crisis. A single conflict, drought, or political decision can send shockwaves through the supply chain, leaving fields empty and markets anxious. The Russia-Ukraine conflict shattered this balance, turning Ukraine's breadbasket into a battleground. Once a reliable supplier, Ukraine's fields now bear the scars of war, and its farmers face uncertainty with every season. Ukraine now accuses Russia of stealing wheat from occupied territories and selling it abroad. These allegations have sparked outrage, raising questions about ownership, justice, and the true cost of war. Bangladesh, a nation of 170 million reliant on imports, is named as a buyer of this disputed grain. For Bangladesh, affordable wheat is a necessity, not a luxury. Its people depend on these shipments to survive. This accusation sparks a diplomatic and ethical dilemma. Can a country seeking affordable food unwittingly buy stolen goods? The lines between survival and complicity blur, leaving governments and citizens with difficult choices. We'll explore Ukraine's claims, the journey of the wheat, Bangladesh's predicament, and the global implications. How does a single shipment ripple through economies and lives, far beyond the fields where it was grown? This is more than a story about wheat. It's about how conflict in one region can shape choices and lives across the world. The bread on your table may carry the weight of distant struggles and unseen decisions. The struggle for resources in one place can create impossible choices in another. When supply falters, prices rise, and families everywhere feel the impact. Let's unravel the tangled story of the stolen wheat controversy and discover how a single grain can connect, divide, and define our world. Ukraine has leveled a serious accusation against Russia, claiming that Moscow is systematically looting grain from the occupied regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia. These areas, once known for their fertile soil and abundant harvests, have become flashpoints in a new kind of economic warfare. Ukrainian officials say that what's happening isn't just a byproduct of conflict, but a deliberate and organized campaign to strip the land of its resources. According to Ukraine, this is not a matter of a few isolated thefts or rogue actors. Instead, they allege a coordinated operation, with Russian forces seizing control of farms, loading grain onto trucks, and transporting it in large convoys to ports in Crimea. The scale, they say, is industrial. Thousands of tons of wheat and other grains are being moved under armed guard, with the entire process overseen by Russian authorities. Once the grain reaches Crimean ports, it is loaded onto bulk carrier ships. From there, it is exported under the Russian flag, entering global markets through a network of murky and often opaque channels. The grain, originally Ukrainian, is rebranded as Russian, making it difficult for buyers to trace its true origin. To counter this, Ukraine has turned to technology. Using satellite imagery and maritime tracking data, Ukrainian analysts monitor the movement of grain from field to port, identifying suspicious vessels and sharing this intelligence with international partners. This digital surveillance has become a crucial tool in their effort to expose and disrupt the alleged smuggling operation. One country that has surfaced in Ukraine's investigation is Bangladesh. Ukrainian officials have pointed to several wheat shipments arriving in Bangladeshi ports, which they believe originated from the occupied territories. These shipments, they argue, are part of a broader pattern of illicit trade that extends far beyond the Black Sea. Ukraine contends that every purchase of this grain not only funds Russia's ongoing war effort, but also helps legitimize the occupation of Ukrainian land. They warn that the profits from these sales are being funneled back into the Russian war machine, prolonging the conflict and deepening the humanitarian crisis. The charge Ukraine brings is grave. This is not simply a trade dispute or a matter of commercial competition. Ukrainian leaders argue that it is a violation of their sovereignty and a breach of international law, amounting to the economic exploitation of an occupied people. In response, Ukraine is calling on the international community to take a stand. They urge all nations to reject Russian grain unless its origin can be independently verified. and to implement strict due diligence measures to avoid becoming complicit in what they describe as a war crime. Ukrainian officials have taken their case to the media, to international organizations, and to the court of public opinion. For countries like Bangladesh, the situation is fraught with diplomatic and ethical challenges. On one hand, there is the need to secure affordable food supplies for their populations. On the other, there is growing pressure to ensure that these imports do not inadvertently support an illegal occupation or violate international norms. The world is now watching closely to see how nations respond to Ukraine's urgent call. The controversy has sparked debates in parliaments, newsrooms, and diplomatic circles across the globe as countries weigh their economic interests against their moral and legal responsibilities. At its core, this dispute is about much more than wheat. It is about the rules and principles that govern global trade in times of war, and about the responsibility of the international community to uphold those rules even in the face of complex geopolitical realities. The stakes could not be higher. For Ukraine, for Russia, for countries like Bangladesh, and for the entire world, the outcome of this controversy will help shape the future of international trade, conflict, and justice. The path from occupied Ukrainian fields to Bangladeshi ports is deliberately obscured. After seizure, grain is moved to Crimean ports where it's mixed with Russian wheat, making its origin nearly impossible to trace. Ships carrying this blend often turn off tracking systems, hiding their routes. Official documents list Russian ports as the origin, masking the true source. International traders handle the sale, and buyers like those in Bangladesh rely on paperwork, not forensic proof. The wheat travels through the Black Sea, Suez Canal, and Indian Ocean, arriving in Bangladesh with its origins buried under layers of logistics. This journey shows how easily a commodity's past can be erased. For importers, the trail ends at the paperwork. For Ukraine, the loss is both economic and symbolic. In peacetime, Ukrainian wheat follows a clear path: harvested, stored, shipped from Black Sea ports, and bought transparently on global markets. Bangladesh, like many nations, depends on this system for affordable food. Once in Bangladesh, wheat is milled into flour and becomes bread, roti, and noodles for millions. The war has shattered this chain, rerouting grain through contested channels. Now, a simple sack of flour in Dhaka may carry the weight of international dispute. Consumers seek food, unaware of the controversy behind it. The supply chain, meant to nourish, is now entangled in conflict. The journey from field to table is no longer just about logistics, it's about ethics and survival. The war has turned food into a flashpoint. The story of wheat is now a story of global consequence. Bangladesh faces a stark reality. Despite its fertile land and hardworking farmers, it simply can't grow enough wheat to feed its vast and ever-growing population. The demand for wheat-based foods has risen sharply in recent years, outpacing what local agriculture can provide. This gap between what is needed and what is produced leaves millions dependent on outside sources for a basic staple. As a result, the country relies heavily on imports, making it vulnerable to global price shocks and sudden supply disruptions. Every shipment that arrives is crucial, and any delay or price hike can have immediate consequences for families across the nation. When war in Ukraine sent wheat prices soaring, Bangladesh scrambled to secure affordable supplies. The crisis exposed just how fragile the food supply chain can be, especially for countries that depend on imports to meet basic needs. Importers are constantly searching for the best deal, often turning to Russian wheat when prices from other sources are too high. In times of crisis, the priority is to keep bread on the table, no matter where the grain comes from. They depend on official documents to verify the origin of each shipment, but in reality, they lack the resources to trace every grain's true source. The complex web of international trade makes it nearly impossible to guarantee the full story behind every sack of wheat. For Bangladesh, buying wheat is about survival, not geopolitics. The priority is clear: ensure that families have enough to eat, especially the most vulnerable. The government points to paperwork and trade norms, caught between the urgent need to feed its people and mounting international pressure to scrutinize every transaction. The accusation of buying stolen grain puts Bangladesh in a diplomatic bind, forcing officials to defend their choices on the world stage while trying to avoid jeopardizing future supplies. It's a classic dilemma: feed the nation or risk global censure. For many, the choice is painfully clear, but the consequences are far-reaching. The stakes are immediate and personal. Food security versus ethical scrutiny. Every decision made in a government office ripples out to the dinner tables of millions. Bangladesh's choices reflect the hard realities of a hungry world, where the struggle to secure food often collides with the complexities of global politics and morality. The stolen wheat controversy ripples far beyond Ukraine and Bangladesh. Disrupted supply and disputed origins drive up global food prices, hitting vulnerable nations hardest. Western allies pressure countries to reject contested shipments, forcing difficult diplomatic choices. The situation blurs the line between legal and illegal trade, threatening the foundations of international commerce. If looted goods can be sold with impunity, it sets a dangerous precedent for future conflicts. The humanitarian cost is severe. Grain meant for Ukraine or global aid programs is diverted, deepening hunger elsewhere. Food becomes a weapon and trade a battlefield. The world's most vulnerable pay the highest price. The controversy exposes the fragility of global food systems. It's a warning of how quickly war can turn sustenance into a source of conflict. Proving where a shipload of wheat truly comes from is nearly impossible. Grain is fungible. Once mixed, its origin is lost. Scientific methods like isotope analysis exist, but they're costly and require extensive databases. Investigators rely on satellite images, shipping records, and whistleblowers to piece together the story. But without a smoking gun, accusations remain allegations. Importers point to official documents, Ukraine points to circumstantial evidence. This stalemate frustrates efforts to enforce accountability. The legal and diplomatic debate hinges on proof that's hard to obtain. The ambiguity benefits those who profit from the trade. The truth, buried in silos and paperwork, remains elusive. The EU, a key Ukraine ally, is determined to stop the trade in stolen grain. It can pressure countries like Bangladesh with diplomatic warnings or even sanctions on companies involved. The EU could threaten Bangladesh's preferential trade access, a vital economic lifeline. Even the hint of such action can force policy changes. The EU also supports Ukraine with tracking technology and legal tools to prove grain origins. Its goal: make trading in looted wheat too risky and costly to continue. The EU's stance raises the stakes for all buyers of Russian grain. The message is clear: trade in stolen goods and face global consequences. The stolen wheat saga reveals how war entangles the world in moral and economic dilemmas. Ukraine seeks justice and sovereignty. Bangladesh seeks food security. Each nation's choices are shaped by necessity and principle. The controversy forces us to ask, is paperwork enough, or do we owe a deeper investigation into what we buy? In a globalized world, every purchase can carry hidden consequences. The story of wheat is a lesson in the fragility of our systems and the complexity of right and wrong. Behind every loaf of bread lies a web of choices, risks, and unseen costs. The journey of grain reminds us, even the simplest food can be tangled in the world's greatest struggles.